Thank you for tuning into our seller interview series. Up today, we've got an AdSense, advertising, and affiliate business for sale in the information niche. Created in January 2015, this business makes $8,855 per month in net profit, and the listing number for the business is 45181. We do these interviews to give potential buyers more information about both the seller and the businesses they're looking to purchase. We hope these insights are helpful for you in making a buying decision. We've got the seller with us today to go through the business and cover everything from niche selection to traffic and monetization. Peter, thank you for coming on here today. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me, Jay.
It is my pleasure. I'm excited to discuss this business with you. It's pretty interesting in the niche you serve and whatnot. But before we dive into the questions that I have for you, I want to go ahead and run through a little quick summary of the business. Sure. Again, the business was built in January of 2015, has a monthly revenue of $9,244, expenses of $389 to make for net profit of $8,855, which is generated on a 12-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the primary domain and outside content and files, Facebook page, email subscribers, email list with 7,500 subscribers. Please note that you must currently have an approved AdSense account before purchasing this business to assure successful migration of the business. Peter, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Sure. So I used to work at a warehouse and there's a bit of an accident there. I goofing around with a forklift and, caused a scene, ran into a pallet full of milk cartons, and long story short, got fired. And that's sort of how I got forced into this space of the online world. I was at home. As a kid, I loved drawing and illustrations and things like that. So I started, designing small applications and messing around with websites. And then one thing led to another. A friend of mine was trying to get rid of his site, and he said, "Hey, would you want to take over?" I don't think he knew at the time that you could, sell it. And I didn't know you could buy sites, but I said, "Dude, why not?" So I took over the site. And that's sort of how I got introduced into the space of owning and operating a website. I learned the basics of WordPress, basic SEO. My background is still in design, and that's probably what I enjoy the most. But you kind of have to learn the ropes of everything a little bit if you were to, run a site on your own. Long story short, that sort of led me into, acquiring this business and running it for the last year or so. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
So does your friend kind of feel bad now that you're selling it and you made a lot of profit with the business?
Well, no, not really, because the site that he gave me, it was really small. It wasn't this one, but it was a small site. It wasn't worth a whole lot of money, now that I look back at it. And this was years ago. And, I did end up selling it. But, it was lunch money, really. It wasn't worth a whole lot of cash. But it served as a good introductory sort of project for me to get my feet wet and sort of learn the basics of the online world.
And now you've built multiple websites, as you said. In fact, you and I spoke rather recently as well. So what makes you feel ready to sell a business? Why have you decided to sell this one?
I guess there really is no formula for me. I'm not really in the business of flipping. I like to, I've only owned a handful of sites, 3 to be, specific, that I really enjoyed, and I had a lot of fun growing them and working on them myself. So I can't say there's a formula to okay, now's the time to sell or now's the time to buy. It just kind of happened with every one of them. And the same happened with this site. It almost sort of fell on my lap. I wasn't expecting it, wasn't really looking for it. But an acquaintance of mine reached out and, they wanted to see if I'd be interested to maybe take over. They were trying to go in the retail space, brick and mortar retail. And, I looked at it and I said, sure. I got a little bit of time on my hands. And that's kind of how I took over. As far as selling it, there's a handful of things that went into play. I honestly thought I'd be holding on to it for much longer. Usually if I get invested with a project, I like to stick with it for, 3, 4, 5 years at least. But in this case, things changed a little bit. My wife and I ended up buying a house. We're doing a lot of work on it. I could use a little bit of capital. And so I'm probably going to use some of this money towards the house. And, I honestly would want to pursue a little bit more videography, which is kind of what I've been playing around more, given that my background is in design, like videography, and that sort of kind of goes hand in hand. And I've been really enjoying it. So, the site's doing good. We could use a little bit of cash. We're trying to do a little bit of traveling. And I have an opportunity to maybe get a little bit more involved with video and sort of all kind of work together to where, my wife and I decided, maybe this is the time to move on to something different. Here I am today.
So in the time that you have owned this business, what's happened? Has it grown? Has it stayed the same?
It has grown. I would say from a revenue standpoint, it picked up a bit. I think traffic's probably about the same. To be completely honest with you, I've owned it for about, a year now, and I actually haven't done a whole lot of work on it. When I took over, again, because it just kind of happened all of a sudden, I didn't really have a strategy, a plan for it. So I didn't do a whole lot of work on it. I did bring in a writer, one of my own guys. He's done some work for me in the past, so I trusted him, and I kind of entrusted him with the day-to-day responsibilities, like, checking the emails and things like that. And it's sort of been on that autopilot ever since. I did do a little bit of trying to attempt to build some links by requesting to guest post and submitting a few, but that was a little bit of time ago. So aside from that, I haven't done a whole lot to try and grow it. And I think kind of shows because traffic hasn't really been growing, if you look back, but it's been stable and, revenue's been really good. And you know what they say, sometimes if it's not broken, no need to fix it. But it could definitely use a little bit of help if you're trying to, grow the business and grow the revenue.
Speaking to maintaining the business, the site as it currently is, how much time do you need to invest yourself?
Well, for the last 6 months or so, I probably haven't invested more than 30 minutes to an hour a day. But that is on, I guess, autopilot mode. And I honestly don't expect it to grow at this rate. I think it's just enough to maintain it. I basically keep an eye on analytics, keep an eye on revenue, just make sure everything's running. Occasionally there could be like a technical hiccup, then you have to get in touch with the hosting provider and have them fix it, things like that. So that's sort of been my daily routine. There isn't a whole lot to it. However, I will say that I think if you want this particular business to grow, you could certainly use help in the social media and SEO side of things. So it would probably take a few hours a day if you're really trying to be aggressive about trying to grow it.
But of course, those things you mentioned, social media, SEO work, all of those could be outsourced. Your role as an owner of this business could still be rather minimal.
Right. And that's kind of what I've done in the past. I've outsourced it. When I tried to do a little bit of SEO, I outsourced it. But these are the kind of things you have to find the right people for. There are plenty of networks out there. And I will say this, that if the new owner wants to do some of these things and they want to try and outsource, I'm more than happy to help them find the right guys. I don't know how good I am at finding people, but it's worked for me in the past. So whatever I know, I'm more than happy to share that and work with them to try and accommodate for it.
With the multiple different revenue streams for the business, can you talk about that a little bit and detail how exactly the business earns money and what the largest stream of revenue is?
The largest stream of revenue as it stands is AdSense, and that's just a plug and play. I've added, I use a plugin called Ad Inserter. It's a really good plugin for anyone who's listening, by the way. But, I've added a few codes, and that's pretty much, I would say, 70 to 80% of revenue today. The remainder of that would be through Commission Junction, and we have a plug within each article. Again, it's done by Ad Inserter, which basically is like a 2-sentence, a quick description of the service that we're promoting, and that leads back to a vendor that we're working with through Commission Junction, and it's just an affiliate revenue that we earn. So between those guys and from CJ and AdSense, that's basically 100% of the revenue. So it's all automated right now, both AdSense and CJ. These are just codes that we set up, and it just kind of sort of runs on its own.
You've touched on a couple things like improving the social media and SEO work as opportunities for growth, but what are some other opportunities for growth for this business that you would focus on?
Well, honestly, I think the niche that the site is in, I know it's going to sound cliche and probably like a cookie cutter answer, but I really do think that probably the most important thing to do here to try and grow would be SEO, just because of the niche that the site's in. It could really benefit from proper SEO on page and off page. I haven't done a whole lot of that, and my knowledge is not the greatest when it comes to that sort of stuff. Social media marketing is something I think to look into, although I don't know how fitting it would be and how well it would work. Again, I'm not like an expert at that. It's funny because I know a little bit of everything, but I'm not very good at anything except maybe design. That's sort of what I love and do. But I think there's a lot of value in those things, and just want to focus on that, just optimizing the content. Our content isn't the greatest. It's a little bit thin at times. Maybe trying to, beef up the link profile and things like that. The other thing is that I've been collecting emails from people subscribing. I've always been told that you want to utilize email, so I've been collecting it because I feel like that's the right thing to do, but I've never actually done anything with them. So I think there's close to, I don't remember what the number is, I think it's like 7,000 or 8,000 subscribers there. So there's somebody who understands email marketing, there's a lot they could do there. So I would probably look into that. And also, I think another important thing to touch on is that you want to maybe optimize the revenue, because right now, normally I own another site, and on there I've done quite a bit of A/B testing, and that's just basically testing one variation of an ad versus another, and it was just all manually done. There's different software to do that, like Ezoic and the other guys. But I did it the old school, just kind of comparing it. I'd run one ad versus the other ad for a week and then compare results and pick the winner. But doing that over and over and over for a course of 2-3 months, I was able to actually up my revenue by like 35%. So I think somebody who understands a little bit of A/B testing and is willing to spend some time to kind of test ads against each other, maybe different positions against each other, that could be an easy way to uplift the overall revenue without even increasing traffic. So, I mean, I can talk about it all day, but those are just a few off the top of my head. I think, Jake, there's a document that the potential buyers receive, right, with like a questionnaire. And I think that was one of the questions that I answered a little bit more in depth and provide a little bit more information as to like some of the ideas that I had.
Yeah, and you clearly have a lot of experience with online business, regardless of the type of website. So if you had to give advice to someone who wants to get started in the online business world, follow in your footsteps, Peter, what would be, the number one thing that you would tell them?
I don't know if I'm really qualified to answer this question. There's guys like Neil Patel and all these guys that really know what they're doing. I've done a lot of mistakes in the past, and I think as a designer, I kind of approach things different. I don't always put the right emphasis on the right things. I think one advice I would give, just from my perspective, is that 80-20 rule. I find myself getting caught up in the details and working on things that are responsible for only about 20% of the outcome. And one example would be like design, right? I'll spend a crazy amount of time trying to design something. But in reality, UX, UI, it's important, yes. But at the end of the day, if it only results in a 3% increase in my revenue, I mean, was it really worth spending all that time? And I think especially when you're starting out, not getting so caught up in the details and working on things that are repetitive but drive very little outcome, right? So just picking your battles, focusing on the few things that will have the greatest impact, and learning and going from there.
Would you commit to a non-compete?
Yes, I would. It would have to be, it's a bit of a broader niche, but if it's, structured properly, sure. I don't really intend to do the same thing again.
How much support are you willing to offer a new owner during the transition period?
Just whatever it takes, happy to jump on phone calls, Skype, exchange emails, at least for a month to get the new buyer acquainted. I really don't think it would take them more than a week, honestly, because it's a very, very basic site. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just done well, and there's a person who's taking care of most of the responsibilities. So there's not a whole lot to it, but like I said, I have no problem, committing to 30 days or 60 days or whatever it takes to make the new owner feel comfortable. You mentioned it before, we've done this in the past, and I actually sold one of my other sites like 6 months ago, I think. And to this day, I still keep in touch with the buyer. In fact, last week we're chatting it up on Skype. So I'm more than happy to. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still online all the time. So I'm happy to help whenever I can.
Are you open to negotiating on something like an earnout?
I always want to hear the offer, sure. But I think my heart's set on like an all cash deal. And part of the reason is because I actually need it right now with the house and all, and us wanting to go away for a little bit, do some traveling. So I'm definitely going to be more inclined towards an all cash deal, and I'm kind of set on that. But, I'm willing to hear people out if they have ideas on how they want to structure it.
Awesome, Peter. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time. As you've mentioned, you've sold a site 6 months ago, and this is not the first one of these that we've done. I love having you on here and sharing your insights and experience. So putting everything together that and looking at this site in particular, why do you feel like it is a business worth buying?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because it's extremely simple. Somebody who wants to get in the space but doesn't want to get overwhelmed with the details and the technical nitty and gritty things of running a business like this would be a good opportunity, because it's one of those, I don't want to say set it and forget it, because it's not like that. I mean, if you're going to buy it, you want to get to work and you want to do something about it. You want to try and grow it. But at the same time, there's only so many hoops you have to jump through. It's a content-based site. So long as you have a good content writer, you've taken care of the biggest part of this business. What's left is going out there and doing whichever marketing you're good at or wish to pursue, whether it's social media or you want to go after SEO or you want to just outsource all of that and be the guy who oversees it. In any case, there's only a couple of moving pieces, and I think for somebody who wants to get in it and really reap the rewards of a passive income site without getting too dirty with it, I think this would be a good opportunity. It's well established and it's been around for several years, since 2015, I think. So its traffic and its revenue is shown that the business is working. It just needs somebody to keep an eye on it,
Peter, thank you again very much for the time with me today.
Sure, no problem, man.
If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And if you want more information, the link will be below the video that will take you to this marketplace listing. If you're watching this on the listing site and want more information, become a depositor today. When you make the deposit, one of our business advisors will be in contact with you, and you'll be given everything you need to review this business. Have a great day.